Steve Crowder, Fox News' youngest contributor. I hate him. He's 12 years old. People keep saying he's brilliant and funny, which is even more annoying to me. And he joins us from New York, which is also quite annoying. Hello!
Hello, how are you? You know, you have my number off by a few years. I think you're confusing me with Jonathan Coren.
Well, in your 20s, listen, when you get to the age of 53 and you lose your hair, everybody looks like they're 12 years old. The GOP... We follow it, obviously, in Canada. It's very important to us. But there's something almost artificial, I find, about this current race. People like Gingrich, who we thought were gone years ago, and Romney, who seems almost robotic. There's no one character coming forward who you can say, he's impressive.
You know, I think Newt Gingrich was really impressive at a few of the debates. Personally, I think Santorum has honestly been the most consistent. Like him or hate him, you know where the guy stands. I think Newt Gingrich has sort of been trying to throw haymakers, trying to Mike Tyson this thing, when you have a guy like Mitt Romney who's been doing the Tommy Hearns, working the jab, and it creates a cumulative effect. He's been consistent. I think last night Santorum had a great performance. And obviously, you know, there are the personal issues with Newt Gingrich that really do matter to conservatives. You know, is he still a philanderer? We don't know. So it definitely is. Listen, nobody's perfect. None of them are really thrilling anybody. You got, you know, Mitt Just for Men Romney, Newt Stay Puft Gingrich, or Wallace and Gromit Santorum. They're not ideal candidates, but, you know, any of them would be wildly better than Barack Obama as president.
But surely Santorum, who I think is a very, very decent man, actually, there's no chance. He could never win this.
Well, I don't know if there's no chance. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was one Newt Gingrich screw-up away from being the not Mitt candidate. And as far as electability, listen, if I'm Barack Obama, I'm licking my lips at the chance to go up against Romney because he's so easy to paint as the 1%. That's why you saw these morons in this administration right now. And I do mean morons, cozy up to the occupiers who did the whole 99, 1% narrative. And that's what they were doing. They were gearing up for campaigning against Romney. They're already prepped for him as the 1%. Santorum at least would get those Reagan Democrats, the blue dogs, because he really is sort of a working class guy. I think he has more in common with the average everyday American, certainly from an economic standpoint. But then you go to the social side where most Americans are socially relatively conservative, but this guy is pretty far to the right. So, you know, who knows? He doesn't have any skeletons in his closet or graveyards on his front lawn like Newt Gingrich with the possible open marriage that people are really sort of speculating about. But I think he does have a chance.
Well, that traditional blue-collar, well, former blue-collar Catholic vote, immigrant or vicarious immigrant, Reagan got that vote. Bush got part of it. A lot of it went back to the Democrats last time round. I think Santorum could probably win that around, but he has this reputation. When you read what he's said on issues of sexuality, he's not that extreme, but he has a reputation for being so, and that's going to hurt him.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, Rick Santorum has a Google problem where you basically had a gay celebrity go out who didn't like what Rick Santorum said, even though it was taken out of context, and he went to clarify it, whether you agree with him or not, and basically tried to slander Rick Santorum by stealing and hijacking his last name. By the way, in the process, I'm sure this guy was completely destroying any negative stereotypes that Christian Southern voters would have about gays in the United States. So that really doesn't end up hurting Santorum. It ends up hurting the gay-stapo bullies in the gay community. Yeah, listen, I think he has more of a reputation for that, like you said, as opposed to when you actually look at what he says within the context of it. Listen, he's Catholic. Okay, I'm not Catholic. I disagree with them on church doctrine. But it's not true that he's against contraception in the United States, that he wants to make it illegal. That's a rumor that's out there. He talks about himself, why he hasn't used it in his family.
Yeah, absolutely. This is about how he believes Catholics, in particular he as a Catholic, should behave. It doesn't apply to the rest of the country. And as for the use of his name, and you know what is happening now, half the people watching are now Googling Santorum. What you will see there is grotesque. No, it's not the end of the world, but it's grotesque. But just think for a moment, if this sort of thing was applied to, say, a gay activist, a gay politician, by someone who was morally conservative, you would be outraged. How dare they do it? Well, they did it to Santorum, and it's simply wrong. Speaking of faith, Christianity, and America, Tim Tebow, who plays something called football, I am told. Now, I mean, this guy, you see him interviewed, he's such a nice fella. He's actually quite bright, too. He's articulate, he's decent, a good family person, and defies the laws of physics when he plays. He's quite incredible. He does, and I speak this as a Christian, he's a bit strong for me. There's a bit too much of it. However, for goodness sake, compared to other footballers who rape people and fight dogs to death and swear all the time, he's getting a very hard time of it from the press, isn't he?
Absolutely. I find it odd when you say rape people in the arbitrary sense, like that's just what they do on Saturday nights. Hey, time to go rape people. But you're right. Rapists, felons, well, I don't want to say offend. I'm not in the business of being offended, but you know what? That's much more offensive, I would think, to the American public than a guy taking a knee. And let's not even count crimes. Let's talk about their behavior, driving up in their rims, going to pop bottles and smacking booties in the club. You know what? Maybe their lives would be a lot better and their lives wouldn't suck. They wouldn't be screw-ups if they did take a knee every now and then. Maybe their children wouldn't be fatherless if they encouraged their children to take a knee with them and pray every now and then. I think there are worse things. And I remember a time in this country where people were much more offended by folks shacking up and living together in sin, what they used to call it, than some guy praying at a football game. It's ridiculous.
I love you. No, you're so right, though. Because
I love you, but not in that way, because we're conservatives.
And I'll say it again. I find some of Tim Tebow's, what he does, I think it could be more subdued, if you like, more maybe in the European fashion. However, this is a really decent man. I mean, good-looking, incredible build, great athlete, clever. The model American, but you have all these people in the American media who just take a delight in bringing him down and mocking him. And when did this begin? Is this 10, 15, 20 years old? Because he would have been a national hero, at least in the last generation.
Right. You just described him as good-looking, good build. You really do love me. We need to talk after the show.
Hey, I'm English. My sexuality is very fluid, but don't tell my wife.
It's okay. Here's the thing, too. It really is a hypocrisy from the mainstream media, and it's by design. It's not by accident. A good example would be Newt Gingrich. They want to point out the hypocrisy of him requesting an open marriage. Listen, we do know the guy was a philanderer at one point. We don't know if he requested an open marriage, but guess who does? Leftists, people like Will Smith and Jada, Brad and Angelina. Sorry, I guess they didn't get married, so yeah, that works like a charm. Or recently we saw Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher. These are people who have campaigned for Barack Obama. These are people around whom leftists like to huddle. So the fact is, they like to point and say, ha ha, you missed the high jump trying to reach for that bar, because they've set no standards of their own. So with Tim Tebow, it's the same thing. I bet you if he has any kind of a scandal, the media is going to make a much bigger deal about that than they did about a man who electrocuted and drowned dogs after fighting them.
We have to have you back on the show. Will you come back?
I will never come back.
I like the cut of your jib. Thanks so very much, my friend.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure.